Welcome and welcome to Joshua 6. We're going to talk about the capture of Jericho. Yes. You hear about the capture, when you was growing up, in Bible school. Now we're going to review it, and hopefully the explanation that I'm giving you will cover everything that you learned before and some that you may not have learned already. Also, at this time, I'd like for you to like the page, subscribe, and also try to donate toward our ministry so we could continue to do the work that we do every single day, which is teaching the Word of God throughout the world and also helping those who are in need. Okay? So let's start with Joshua 6, verse 1. Okay. Now Jericho was shut up inside and out because of the Israelites. No one came out and no one went in. The Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have handed Jericho over to you, along with its king and soldiers. You shall march around the city. All the warriors circle the city once, though you shall do for 6 days, with 7 priests bearing 7 trumpets of ram horns before the ark. On the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, the priests blowing the trumpet. When they make a long blast with the ram horn, as soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city will fall down flat, and all the people shall charge straight ahead. 6. So Joshua son of Nun summoned the priests and said to them, "Take up the ark of the covenant, and have 7 priests carry 7 trumpets of ram horn in front of the ark of the Lord." 7. The people To the people he said, "Go forward and march around the city. Have the army, have the armed men pass on before the ark of the Lord." As Joshua had commanded the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpet of ram horn before the Lord went forward, blowing the trumpet, with the ark of the covenant of the Lord following them. And the armed men went before the priests, who blew the trumpet. The rear guard came after the ark, while the trumpet blew continually. 10. To the people Joshua gave this command: "You shall not shout or let your voice be heard, nor shall you utter a word until the day I tell you to shout. Then you shall shout." 11. So the ark of the Lord went around the city, circling it once, and they came into the camp and spent the night in the camp. 12. Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord. The 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpet of ram horn before the ark of the Lord passed on, blowing the trumpet continually. The armed men went before them, and the rear guard came after the ark of the Lord, while the trumpet blew continually. 14. On the 2nd day they marched around the city once, and then returned to the camp. They did this for 6 days. 15. On the 7th day they rose early at dawn and marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. It was only on that they marched around the city 7 times. 16. And at the 7th time, when the priests had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city. The city and all that is in it shall be devoted to the Lord for destruction. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her and her house shall live, because she hid the messenger we sent." 18. As for you, keep away from the thing devoted to destruction, so as not to covet and take any of the devoted things, and make the camp of Israel an object for destruction, bringing trouble upon it. 19. But all silver and gold, and vessels of bronze and iron, are sacred to the Lord. They shall go into the treasure of the Lord. 20. So the people shouted, and the trumpet were blown. As soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpet, they raised a great shout, and the wall fell down flat. So the people charged straight ahead into the city and captured it. Then the devoted then they devoted to destruction by the edge of the sword all in the city, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkeys. 22. Joshua said to the two men who had spied out the land, go into the prostitute house and bring the woman out of it, and all who belong to her, as you swore to her. 23. So the young men who had been spied went in and brought Rahab out, along with her father, mother, brother, and all who belonged to her. They brought all her kindred out and set them outside the camp of Israel. They burned down the city and everything in it, only the silver and gold and the vessels of bronze and iron they put into the treasures of the house of the Lord. But Rahab the prostitute with her family and all who belonged to her, Joshua spared. Her family had lived in Israel ever since. For her, for her hid the messenger from whom Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. 26. Joshua then pronounced this oath, saying, cursed before the Lord be anyone who tries to build this city, this Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn, he shall lay its foundation, and at the cost of his youngest, he shall set up its gate. 27. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame was in all the land. Wow. Okay. Let's do a quick review of chapter 6. I know I say quick. The reviews are never that quick. But it's good to say. Okay? The capture of Jericho. This is what verse 1 to 21 is pretty much talk about. Capture of Jericho. The problem facing Israel is Jericho's impregnable defensive walls. Yes, Jericho's defensive walls. Chapter 6, verse 1, all the way down to chapter 10, verse 43, goes together. Okay, put that in your mind, put that in your notebook. So when we do chapter 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you will put them into one category because they all goes together. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to verse 43 or verse 10 goes together. Now, in this long and major segment of the book, everything turned upon the intervention of Yahweh to produce three defensive demonstrations of divine power at Jericho in chapter 6, at Ai on chapter 7 and 8, and at Gibeon on chapter 9 and 10. These three stories embodies the idea of miraculous sign that Yahweh did. Okay? Now, now it's time for the rough overview of chapter 6, verse 1 to 7. Okay? Jericho is captured first and place off limit for Israel. The story may reflect a combination of two traditions. In verse 3 to 21, the core of the chapter, where the walls collapse at the climax on the seventh day, after 6 days of ceremonial preparation. There is no mention of the city by name, of the king, or of resistance by the inhabitant. This account of ceremonial siege and ritual victory is framed by verse that connect with the Rahab story in chapter and verse 1 and 2. Verse 1 and 2. Okay? Mention the king and soldiers. In verse 22 to 25. Okay? Representing the sequel of chapter 2, the deliverance of Rahab and her household. The frame story, though, seem to present the takeover of the city as an inside job in response to a military siege. The story of Bethel captured in Judges 1, verse 22 to 26. Joshua's introduction to spare Rahab and her household on verse 17. Okay, splice the two tradition together. Now, okay, and verse 1. Now Jericho was shut up inside and out because of the Israelites. No one came in, out and no one went in. Okay, verse 1. That Jericho was shut up inside and out clearly describe a military siege. Regulation for serious warfare distinguish between cities that lies outside Israel inheritance in Deuteronomy 20, verse 10 to 15. And those that have belonged to one of the seven nations in Deuteronomy 20, verse 17. Okay? And the Septuagint consent of the later. Let me read that again. In Deuteronomy 20, verse 17, in the Septuagint and Samaritan Pentateuch, this story ostensibly concerned one of the later. Now, let's continue on with verse 2. The Lord said to Joshua, see, I have handed Jericho over to you, along with its king and soldiers, as an assurance of victory was part of the holy war tradition in Joshua 8, verse 1, and also Joshua 10, verse 8. Okay? The holy war tradition. We're going to do the holy war introduction next. So watch out for that video. Okay? Now, verse 3. You shall march around the city, all the warriors circling the city once, though you shall do for 6 days. Israel is to engage in a ceremonial siege for 7 days, right? And ceremonial siege. And for 6 days they will prepare, and on the 7th day they will attack. Now, verse 4. With 7 priests bearing 7 trumpets of ram horn before the ark. On the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, the priests blowing the trumpet. The 7 priests bearing 7 trumpets. Repeated use of the sacred number 7 and the role of the priest suggests that the story is based in part on liturgical action. Okay. Now, verse 5. When they make a long blast with the ram horn, as soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city will fall down flat, and all the people shall charge straight ahead. Verse 6. A long blast on a trumpet will signal attack, and a great shout will initiate it in verse 16 and also in verse 20. Both are part of the holy war tradition. Okay? Now, let's do verse 8 and 9. As Joshua had commanded the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets, 7 trumpets of ram horn before the Lord, went forward blowing the trumpet, with the ark of the covenant of the Lord following them. Verse 9. And the armed men went before the priests who blew the trumpet. The rear guard came after the ark, while the trumpet blew continually. The order of march is armed men followed by 7 priests with 7 trumpets. Then the men, then the ark, and finally the rear guard. Let me read that again for you. The order of march is armed men following by 7 priests with trumpet, then the ark, and finally the rear guard. Okay, that is the order of the march that the people had to march through. Now let's do verse 15. On the 7th day they rose early at dawn and marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. It was only on that day that they marched around the city 7 times. Around the city 7 times on one day presupposes a city mostly in ruin, though putting no obstruction in the path of the marchers. Okay? Now, verse 17. The city and all that is in it shall be devoted to the Lord for destruction. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her and her house shall live, because she hid the messenger Reset. Okay. Devoted to the Lord for destruction. Okay. Devoted for the Lord for destruction. The Hebrew term Sherem, that's Cherem, refers to an ad hoc, HOC, decree. In Leviticus 27, verse 28 and 29, it was not an exclusive Israelite word or practice. In Israel, it has been suggested the Sherem may be understood in connection with efforts at disease control, epidemic disease, especially bubonic plague, was not uncommon in the aftermath of warfare. Now, verse 18. As for you, keep away from the thing devoted to destruction, so as not to covet and take any of the devoted thing, and make the camp of Israel an object for destruction, bringing trouble upon it. To take any of the devoted thing would put Israel itself under the ban, an object for destruction, by the principle of con- by the principle of contagion. This will be a sham crime. That's ACHN apostrophe S. Hashem's crime. And chapter 7, verse 21. Joshua 7, verse 21. Okay. Let me read 7:21 for you. When I saw among the spoil a beautiful mantle from Shinar, and 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold weighing 50 shekels, then I covered them and took them. They now lie hidden in the ground inside my tent, with the silver underneath. Okay. Verse 19. Verse 19. But all silver and gold and vessels of bronze and iron are sacred to the Lord. They shall go into the treasure of the Lord. Okay. At Jericho, no private spoil were to be taken, except for valuable metals which would go into the treasury of the Lord, the common coffers. The city and everything in it was to be destroyed. Only one other town mentioned in the Jericho story, Hazah, in chapter 11, is consecrated, placed under the Sherem. Cherem, the Sherem. Okay. Now, let's continue on and do verse 20. So the people shouted, and the trumpets were blown. As soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpet, they raised a great shout, and the wall fell down. So the people charged straight ahead into the city and captured it. So Israel makes an assault from all sides at once. All sides at once. Okay, let's continue on with verse 20. With verse 22. 22 to 23. 22 to 27. Talk about the aftermath of Jericho's wall. The aftermath of Jericho's fall. Okay? Verse 23. So the young men who had been spied went in and brought Rahab out, along with her father, her mother, her brother, and all who belonged to her. They brought all her kindred out and set them outside the camp of Israel. All right? Rahab family stayed outside the camp because the holy wall encampment must remain ritually clean. And that happened in Deuteronomy 23, verse 9 to 14. Verse 9 to 14. Now, in verse 24, they burned down the city and everything in it, all the silver and gold and the vessels of bronze and iron. They put into the treasure of the Lord, treasure of the house of the Lord. 24. They burned down the city like the treatment of Hazor. That's Hazor. And Joshua 11 verse 11, which itself is presented as an exception to the general rule. And Joshua 11 verse 13. Let me read that for you. Verse 11. And they put the swords, all who were in it. And they put to the sword all who were in it, utterly destroying them. There was no one left who breathed, and he burned Hazar with fire. Verse 17. Verse 13. But Israel burned none of the town that stood on a mount except Ammons, except Hazar, which Joshua did burn. Now, verse 25. Verse 25. But Rahab the prostitute with her family and all who belonged to her, Joshua spared. Her family has lived in Israel ever since, for she hid the messenger from whom Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. Okay. The Rahab story explain the justified. Okay. It explained and justified the existence of a foreign group still living in Israel. Verse 25 said, has lived in Israel ever since. That's Rahab. This note shift focus away from the fall of the city and onto the story of the covenant keeping by and with Rahab. Okay? Now, verse 26. Verse 26. Joshua then pronounced this oath, saying, cursed before the Lord be anyone who tried to build this city, this Jericho, at the cost of his firstborn. He shall lay its foundation, and at the cost of his youngest he shall set up its gate. Joshua captured Jericho. States are being banded, devoted to destruction. And verse 21. Then they devoted to destruction by the edge of the sword, all in the city, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkeys. Okay? With a curse blocking its reconstruction. I want you to look at Deuteronomy 13, verse 16. Okay, for a moment. Deuteronomy 13. I'm on the front. 10, 12, 13, verse 16. All of his spoil you shall gather into his public square. Then burn the town and all its spoil with fire, as a whole burnt offering to the Lord your God. It shall remain a perpetual ruin, never to be rebuilt. Okay? So I wanted you to compare verse verse 26, verse 26 of chapter 6 to 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 I want you compare verse 26 when you talk about the destruction, which is of verse 21, to Deuteronomy 13, verse 16. Okay? And also 1 King 16, verse 34, report the consequence of this curse. Okay? 1 King 16, verse 34. Let me read 1 King for you. 2 King. Okay. And this day, here of Bethel built Jericho. He laid his foundation at the cost of Abiram, his firstborn, and set up his gate at the cost of his youngest son, Segub, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke by Joshua, son of Nun. Okay? That was when Ahab marries Jezebel and worship Baal. Okay? When we get to 1 King 16, I will explain that to you more in detail. Yes. I'll explain that to you more in detail. Oh, okay. Now, and so I want you to write down for verse 26, Deuteronomy 13, verse 16, and 1 King 16, verse 34, and also verse 21. You have to compare that to to um to verse 21 of verse 21 of chapter 6. Now, let me continue with more, and more of Joshua for you. Okay? Now, verse 26. I'm going to go more in detail on that. Okay? Curse before the Lord. This cursing is a captured city is unique in the Old Testament. Although it is not unknown elsewhere, there must be some connection between the act of consecration of the woman and the prohibition of resettlement. It is possible that the 6 days of practice and the clamor on the seventh day are directed at demon considered responsible for disease. For Jericho was an oasis long since fallen on hard time and understood to be an unhealthy place for Israelites to live. When you see Elijah complain about water at Jericho in 2 King 2 verse 19. Let me read 2 King 2 verse 19 for you. 2 King, I'm in chapter 19. 2 King 2 verse 19. Write the verses down so you could have them ready. Okay. 2 King 2 verse 19. Now the people of the city said to Elijah, that's Elisha, Elisha, the location of the city is good, as my Lord sees, but the water is bad, and the land is unfruitful. Once the Lord has cursed a land, it tell you don't live there, you can't live there. The location may be good, but the land is not producing anything. So it's not good. Okay, you've been cursed. Now, okay, let's continue on. The disease in question may well have been that's schistosomiasis. That's I can't pronounce it. That's SCHISTOSOMIASIS. Okay. The intermediate carrier of which is freshwater snail. The intermediate carriers of which is a freshwater snail. Bulinus, that's Bulinus. Truncatus, Truncatus, found in excavation at the site of Jericho. The snail flourish in water contaminated by human waste, such as the Jericho spring. so positioned as to receive all the runoff from the eastern slope of the mountain. It is also possible that the protective clamor that accompanied or soon followed by a providential seismic event along the Jericho Valley wall line, collapsing surviving segment of once mighty fortification, the temporary damming of the Jordan in chapter 3. The result would be the surviving story as a prime example of amazing grace. Now, this would explain, you know, when I was reading that, I'm thinking about, okay, the snails living off human waste. This explains why you should not eat those things anyway from the start. And anyway, remember to write down 2 King verse 2 to 2 King 2 verse 19 on your list, and Joshua 11 verse 13, Joshua 11 verse 11. Okay. The whole chapter 11 if you can. And Judges 1 verse 22 to 26, Deuteronomy 20 verse 10 to 15, Deuteronomy 20 verse 17, right? Leviticus 27 verse 28, 29 as part of your reference. Also, we concentrated a little bit on verse 1 and 2, verse 22 and 25. Just read the whole chapter 6 of Joshua, but we talked about it into our story. And I wanted you to concentrate on Joshua 9 and Joshua 10 and Joshua 7 and 8. Okay? We gave that to you as an overall review when we told you chapter 6 verse 1 to chapter 10 verse 43 goes hand in hand together, and I explained that. If you miss anything, please go back and watch the video over again. Okay? It's there for you to teach you the Word of God. So you could take your time to understand it and follow along. May the Lord bless you, keep you, protect you, watch over you, and keep you safe from all harm. May the Lord Almighty keep on protecting you. And may you like this page, share this page, and also donate to this ministry. The link is in the bottom. So it is a safe link to PayPal. So everybody know PayPal, So you could donate through that link, or you could mail your donation directly to the address that's on the bottom of the page also. May the Lord keep you, bless you, protect you, and watch over you. Amen. And keep everybody safe. Till we come again, watch out for the next video, the spoil of holy war. Peace be unto you.